What started as a quiet afternoon turned into a neighborhood scandal when Teresa Whitman dialed 911, because Maye Musk, a retired tech advocate, was seen holding a strange device in her backyard. But as police arrived and suspicion turned to investigation, what they uncovered wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a hidden surveillance network, operating from inside Teresa's own home. Stay with us, because the real threat was never who they thought it was. It was who they refused to see. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Maye Musk didn't usually step into her backyard with an antenna in one hand and a tablet blinking diagnostic logs in the other. But that Tuesday afternoon, something didn't sit right. She had received an automated alert from her home security system, an anomaly in the data stream. Not a breach, not yet, but something close. The kind of thing you wouldn't notice unless you designed the protocol yourself. Which, of course, she had. She stood near the edge of her rose garden, tilting the antenna toward the east wall of her home. The device in her hand pulsed a steady blue, mapping wireless interference patterns. Behind her, the sun filtered through the tall hedges she'd planted years ago for privacy. Across the fence, on the second floor of the adjacent house, a curtain shifted. Maye didn't notice. She was focused on the tablet now, zooming in on one unfamiliar MAC address, something labeled Nova Gateway 05. She hadn't named anything that. Her system didn't auto-name. That was rule number 1. 2 houses over, Teresa Whitman stared from her upstairs window, binoculars pressed against the glass. She watched as Maye moved methodically around her yard, stopping, scanning, jotting notes on a pad. To Teresa, it didn't look like gardening. It didn't look like anything a retired nutritionist should be doing. And the silver-haired woman's face was too focused, too calm. Like she knew something no one else did. Teresa frowned. She didn't trust Maye. Not because of anything specific, but because Maye had that air about her, the kind of woman who didn't wave at block parties, who declined the neighborhood book club, who answered questions with questions and never asked them back. Teresa told herself it wasn't personal. But that didn't stop her from recording a 10-second clip on her phone and uploading it to the private HOA Facebook group with a caption that read, "Suspicious activity behind Lot 22. Anyone else seen this?" Maye glanced briefly at the house across the way, sensing eyes. She had felt that sort of gaze before, the kind that didn't ask, just assumed. It rolled off her back, mostly. She had learned that silence sometimes protected more than protest ever could. Still, the antenna readings weren't right. Her router logs had shown bursts of upload activity at 3:07 a.m. and again at 4:52. Data that didn't match any of her devices. She lived alone. No guests. No smart TVs. No assistants. She had built her own firewall layers. Which meant, if something had slipped through, it was either deliberate or local. She bent down by the garden hose box, unscrewed the plastic cap of a small mesh repeater node she had installed 2 years ago, and scanned its physical logs via NFC. There it was. The same identifier. Nova Gateway 05. Logged in remotely 3 nights in a row. Accessing port 554. Video streaming. Maye didn't curse. She simply straightened her back and exhaled, her breath calm and long. She tapped a few commands onto her screen, isolating the source by signal strength. Whatever it was within 100 feet. That meant the problem wasn't across town. It was right here. Maybe even next door. She stepped farther into the yard, toward the edge of the driveway, where the signal peaked. Her expression didn't change. But inside, she was calculating possibilities, scanning memories of recent faces, deliveries, neighborhood conversations. Something didn't add up. And Maye Musk had spent a lifetime spotting patterns that didn't fit. Behind her, Teresa picked up the phone and hesitated, thumb hovering over the call icon. Her gut told her to report it. Just in case. She didn't want trouble, she told herself. She wanted safety. And if that woman was doing something odd, it was better to be safe than sorry. As Maye pressed one final command, freezing the access logs and backing them to an external drive, her antenna blinked once in red. That was new. Not dangerous. But new. Teresa hit call. A tone rang once. Then a calm voice. 911. What's your emergency? Teresa's reply was quiet, but certain. Yes. I think my neighbor's setting up some kind of device. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't look right. Neither of them knew it yet, but that call would unravel everything. Not just the connection logs. Not just the surveillance. But the assumptions each of them carried. Quietly, confidently, without ever thinking to question them. Until now. The first thing Maye heard was the low rumble of tires slowing over gravel. Not fast. Deliberate. A moment later, the cruiser came into view, white, standard issue, with muted decals and a spotlight that wasn't yet turned on. It rolled to a stop directly in front of her driveway. 2 officers stepped out. The taller one moved like he'd done this 1,000 times. Officer Harlan. Late 30s, squared jaw, eyes that had already judged her before he reached the gate. The second, Officer Priya Mendel, was younger, sharper, and scanning everything, not just Maye, but the devices in her hand, the corners of the yard, the camera above the garage. Maye didn't move. She stood by the hydrangeas with her tablet in one hand and the antenna resting by her side like it was a walking cane. Officer Harlan said, his tone flat. We received a call reporting suspicious activity on this property. Can you tell us what you're doing? Maye tilted her head slightly. I live here. I'm running diagnostics on my home network. Something isn't behaving the way it should. Harlan stepped closer, his hand near his utility belt, not on the holster, but not far either. And that device? He asked, gesturing to the antenna. Directional signal mapper, Maye said, her voice even. Homemade. It measures Wi-Fi interference and signal strength in microzones. Officer Mendel blinked. That wasn't what she'd expected. Do you have identification? Harlan asked. Maye nodded slowly, placing the tablet down on a patio chair before reaching into her back pocket. Her movements were slow, precise, non-threatening. She handed over her ID. He studied it. Maye Musk, he read aloud. Any relation? Maye gave a half smile. Mother. There was a pause. Mendel gave him a look that said, don't let it distract you. Harlan handed the ID back. We'd like to take a look at what you're doing, he said. Just to clear things up. Maye exhaled. Are you asking, or telling me? We're asking, Mendel said quickly, cutting through the tension. But we need to make sure there's no risk to the neighborhood. Maye's lips thinned. Then, without a word, she turned and walked toward the house. They followed. Teresa Whitman was now standing on her porch across the street, arms folded, watching like she'd summoned order and was waiting to see justice served. Inside, Maye led them to the dining table, placed the antenna down, and mirrored her tablet screen to a monitor. The logs appeared, technical, complex, time-stamped. I've had 4 unknown access attempts into my home network in the past week, Maye began. Each one comes from a local IP address, unregistered with the neighborhood provider. One of them accessed my front porch camera and then my interior hall feed. That's why I was scanning today. The signal spike is coming from somewhere within a 100-foot radius. Mendel stepped forward, intrigued now. You're saying someone nearby has been tapping into your security system? Maye nodded. Not just tapping. Observing. Quietly. Repeatedly. I've already locked out the ports, but I haven't found the source. Harlan frowned. And you didn't report this to us? Maye looked at him directly. I was gathering proof. You tend to believe it when it's printed. The monitor beeped. A red flash, again. Maye tapped the log. There it is. Someone tried to reconnect while you were standing in my kitchen. Mendel stepped closer. Can you show us the source? Maye expanded the screen. The interface drew a heat map of signal strength, shaded in red, orange, yellow. The brightest flare sat on the northwest edge of the map. That's, Mendel paused. That's right next to lot 21. Maye nodded. Teresa's property. Outside the window, Teresa was still watching. When Maye turned her head, the older woman retreated quickly behind her curtains. Now, May said quietly, can we talk about what's actually suspicious? The officers looked at each other. Harlan's face had hardened, but not in the way it was earlier. Now, it held something else. Doubt. A shifting line. Mendel asked, do you mind if we examine your router and the backup node? May gestured to the small glass cabinet under the stairs. Go ahead. But I'd suggest you start with that spike. It's not me you should be worried about. A silence settled in the room. Not hostile. Not calm. Just heavy. The kind of silence that comes before a truth people don't want to uncover. Harlan radioed for a mobile forensics unit. Mendel began noting coordinates from the signal log. And May. She stepped back, folded her arms, and watched. Not out of arrogance, but because for once, someone else was starting to see what she'd seen all along. This wasn't about suspicion. It was about where people chose to look, and what they refused to see until it was staring back at them through a window. The mobile forensics van arrived 20 minutes later, slow and quiet, as if it didn't want the neighborhood to notice what was unfolding. But by then, a few curtains had already been drawn. Cars parked a little farther away than usual. And Teresa Whitman had disappeared from her porch entirely. May sat at her dining table with a fresh cup of black tea, one hand resting on her lap, the other loosely curled around the mug. The antenna lay unplugged beside her, silent now. Its job was done. Officer Mendel had pulled out a tablet of her own, linking wirelessly to May's router node. Two technicians in plain black polo shirts began unpacking network sniffers and signal boosters, setting them up in the living room like it was just another day at work. But nothing about this felt ordinary. The encryption here is military grade, one of the techs muttered, half impressed, half confused. May didn't look up. AES 256 with rolling keys and obfuscated Mac cycling. And still, someone got in. Harlan stood with arms crossed by the entryway, eyes tracking everything. He wasn't speaking much now. Just watching. Listening. Mendel leaned over the log display. Do you have a full list of the devices that were connected during the breach? May nodded and pressed a key. The screen populated with 6 entries. 5 were hers. The 6th read, Nova Gateway 05. No manufacturer data. Mendel asked. Scrubbed, May replied. Deliberate masking. But the routing behavior is inconsistent with most commercial devices. Whoever built this either modified firmware or is using a rogue repeater. One of the techs stood, holding up a handheld scanner. Signal strongest from the northwest quadrant. We're picking up unusual activity in the 5 GHz band. Like, too clean. As if someone's spoofing interference to hide a signal. Mendel's brows lifted. Is that even possible? May finally looked at her. It's not just possible. It's standard practice in ghost surveillance setups. The word hung in the air. Ghost surveillance. Illegal, sophisticated, and very personal. Mendel swallowed and leaned toward the heat map again. The brightest signature hadn't shifted. It still pulsed gently just beyond the hedge line. Right on the border of Teresa Whitman's property. May stood and walked toward the window. Her voice, when it came, was low. Years ago, I did a lecture series on digital ethics. I said the future wouldn't be defined by how much data we can gather, but by how easily we pretend we're not gathering it. Most people nodded. Some clapped. No one really listened. Mendel stepped beside her. We're listening now. A technician walked in from the porch, holding a small device no larger than a car key fob. Found this tucked under the lattice near the shared fence, he said. It's a repeater. Custom shell. Likely piggybacking onto the mesh and transmitting off-site. May stared at it. That's not mine. We know, the tech said. Mendel took it in her gloved hand and turned it over. Batteries still warm. Someone's maintaining this regularly. Harlan finally spoke. We need a search warrant. If this thing is sitting right between properties, we're going to need access to both. May turned to him. It's not between anything. Look at the soil line. That lattice is fully inside her garden bed. Mendel looked. She was right. The device had been planted on Teresa's side of the border. Before they could process that, the scanner beeped again. A second signal had activated. Slightly weaker, farther away. Mendel tapped the screen. Another repeater. This one's behind lot 19. That's 2 in one block. Maye's voice sharpened. It's a network. Mendel exhaled. And not just to steal Wi-Fi. Maye walked back to the table, pulled up her archived footage, and played a clip from 3 nights ago. The porch light had flickered at exactly 3:07 a.m. The camera feed glitched. Then, briefly, a frame showed something odd, the hallway light switching on, without motion trigger. The camera didn't see movement, she said. But it lit up anyway. Someone was watching. Mendel leaned in. Through your own feed. Maye nodded. And likely others. No one spoke for a long while. Outside, the wind shifted slightly. Leaves rustled along the curb. Someone's dog barked, then stopped. The block remained quiet, unaware that its illusion of privacy had just fractured. Harlan stepped out to make the call for warrants. Mendel stayed behind, staring at the signal map that now showed 3 dots, 2 confirmed, 1 suspected. Maye looked down at the repeater on the table and whispered, mostly to herself. They weren't just watching me. They were mapping the whole neighborhood. The sun had begun its slow descent behind the row of houses when the first knock landed on Teresa Whitman's door. It was polite. Professional. 3 firm taps. Officer Mendel stood on the porch, flanked by a digital forensics analyst holding a portable terminal. From the sidewalk, Maye could see the silhouette of Teresa through the front window, rigid, unmoving. A breath caught in her throat. Teresa opened the door with forced calm, her lips pressed into a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. We're conducting a neighborhood security sweep, Mendel said gently. There's been some unusual wireless activity detected. Would you mind if we scanned the perimeter of your property? Teresa blinked, then glanced over Mendel's shoulder toward Maye's house. This is about that woman, isn't it? Mendel didn't bite. We're looking at the neighborhood as a whole, Nothing accusatory. We're just trying to keep everyone safe. Teresa hesitated, then stepped aside. Fine. Just don't trample my hydrangeas. The analyst moved quickly, walking the edge of the property, scanning the base of the fence line, the wiring, the garden beds. It didn't take long. He called gently, holding something up. Do you recognize this device? He held the second repeater, the one recovered just hours earlier, now clearly visible under a camouflaged housing, tucked behind a row of planters. The soil around it was disturbed recently, maybe within a few days. Fresh mulch didn't lie. Teresa's face twisted. No. I've never seen that before. What is it? Mendel explained carefully. It's a wireless signal repeater. Someone's been using it to reroute data, possibly from security systems around the block. Teresa's face turned pale. But how could it be on my property? Maye stepped closer from the curb. She didn't say a word. Just watched. Quietly. Not accusing. Just there. Teresa turned, voice higher now. You think I did this? No one's accusing you, Mendel said again. But we do need to ask, do you live here alone? Teresa's throat tightened. Her gaze shifted toward the upstairs window. She paused a beat too long. My nephew, she said finally. Eli. He's staying with me while finishing his graduate work. Mendel's tone remained even. Would you mind if we spoke with him? Teresa hesitated. Something flickered behind her eyes. Fear, doubt, embarrassment, it was hard to tell. Then she nodded. Let me get him. But she didn't move. Instead, she looked across the street. Directly at Maye. I called the police because you were walking around with that thing, Teresa said, her voice brittle. How was I supposed to know you weren't up to something? Maye's response came without venom. Only gravity. You didn't ask. You assumed. Before Teresa could reply, Officer Harlan appeared from the alley, holding a sealed evidence bag. We pulled a partial log from the repeater, he said. Outbound traffic matches timestamps from Maye's compromised cameras. More than one. It also accessed IPs from 4 other homes on the block. Mendel's face darkened. Do we have a destination address? The analyst nodded. Yes. One consistent endpoint. Router ID registered to this residence. Teresa gasped. That's not possible. You mean someone inside my house? Maye stepped forward now, slowly. There's a reason the logs pointed to your property, Teresa. The device was placed here. Not near it. Not beside it. On your land. With your Wi-Fi. Teresa's eyes widened, her voice shaking. No, Eli wouldn't. But the doubt was already blooming, spreading like ink in water. Mendel touched her shoulder. Let's speak to him. It's the only way to be sure. Together, they walked toward the front door. Teresa hesitated at the threshold, then turned back to Maye. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. I thought I was protecting the block. Maye didn't answer right away. Her eyes scanned the yard, the neatly trimmed hedges, the cameras perched under the eaves, all pointing outward. Then she said quietly, sometimes, in trying to protect what we think is ours, we forget to ask who we're actually protecting it from. Inside the house, a staircase creaked. Footsteps above. The first sign that Eli had heard them. But no voice called out. No greeting. Just silence. Teresa swallowed hard, then led them in. What began as a neighbor's suspicion was unraveling into something more unsettling than anyone expected. Not because the danger was unimaginable, but because it was too familiar. And it lived just upstairs. The knock on Eli's bedroom door wasn't loud, but it was deliberate. 3 taps. A pause. Then Officer Mendel's voice. Eli, it's Officer Mendel. We'd like to speak with you for a moment. No reply. Teresa stood just behind the officers, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her breath had grown shallow, like each inhale cost her something. Maye stood at the bottom of the stairs, watching through the slats in the railing. Not intruding. Not intervening. Just present. Another knock. This time firmer. Eli, we're not here to accuse. But we do need your cooperation. Inside the room, the faint sound of movement. A chair scraped against hardwood. Then silence again. Finally, the door opened a crack. Eli Whitman stood in the doorway, tall, wiry, hair slightly unkempt, eyes darting from face to face. He wore headphones around his neck, a sweatshirt with faded coding slogans across the front. His posture was defensive. Not hostile. Just guarded. What's going on? He asked, voice flat. Mendel didn't answer right away. Instead, she let Officer Harlan step forward. We're investigating a series of unauthorized network intrusions in this neighborhood, he said. One of the devices we recovered appears to be transmitting data from several homes, your aunt's property included. The signal traced back to your router. Eli blinked. That's crazy. I don't even touch the router. You live here, Mendel said evenly. Do you mind if we take a look at your laptop? Eli's jaw tightened. You need a warrant. We can get one, Harlan replied. But this is your opportunity to explain first. A long beat passed. Eli looked at Teresa, then at Maye below. His fingers fidgeted by his sides, curling and uncurling. His mask slipped, just for a second. Look, he said, sighing. I wasn't doing anything illegal. Okay. Harlan cut him off. Then why is your network identifier linked to repeaters found transmitting private camera feeds? Eli's lips parted, then closed again. He swallowed. It started as a test, he muttered. I was just trying to see if I could spoof a signal. It was harmless. No one even noticed. Mendel raised a brow. You were intercepting security cameras. Watching your neighbors? Eli shook his head quickly. Not like that. I wasn't stalking anyone. I was experimenting. It's called signal mapping. It's public. It's just data. Data you routed through devices you planted on other people's property? Maye said quietly, her voice drifting up the stairs. Eli's eyes snapped toward her. He hadn't expected her to speak. I didn't think anyone would care, he said. Most people don't even look at their logs. Teresa stepped forward. Eli, please tell me this isn't what it sounds like. He looked at her, his face softening, just a bit. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone, he said. I just wanted to know what people were like when they thought no one was watching. Maye's voice came again, low and firm. You could have asked. You could have knocked on doors. Talked to people. But you chose to hide and observe. That's not curiosity. That's control. Eli opened his mouth. Closed it. He didn't argue. Not anymore. Mendel pulled a small USB stick from her pocket. This was recovered from the repeater outside. Do you know what's on it? Eli's face lost its color. He didn't have to ask. Live streams, Mendel continued. Timestamps. Video segments. Some of them show minors. Children. You intercepted footage from nurseries, bedrooms. That's enough, Teresa whispered, a hand to her mouth. Harlan moved in. Eli Whitman, you are under arrest for unauthorized access of computer systems, unlawful surveillance, and distribution of private data without consent. Wait, no, Eli stepped back. I didn't sell anything. I swear. It wasn't like that. It was just me. I was just watching. No one got hurt. Officer Mendel cuffed him while Harlan read him his rights. Eli didn't resist. He stood, stunned, like the weight of his own actions had just found him. Downstairs, Maye stepped aside as the officers led Eli down. He wouldn't look at her. Not once. Teresa followed, her steps wooden. When they reached the porch, Maye stepped into view again. You were right, Mendel said quietly to her. We would have missed it without you. Maye didn't answer at first. She watched Eli sit in the back of the cruiser, the door closing behind him with a muted click. Then she looked at Teresa. You called the police on me, she said, voice calm. Because I was holding a strange-looking device. Teresa's lips trembled. You thought I was the threat, Maye continued. Because I was outside your pattern. Because I didn't wave. Because I asked questions. Teresa blinked hard. I was wrong. Maye gave a small nod. Not out of forgiveness. Not yet. The danger was in your home, Teresa, she said. But you couldn't see it. Because you were too busy watching me. Teresa opened her mouth, but no words came. She turned away, retreating inside. The cruiser pulled off slowly. The sun dipped lower. And the quiet returned. Not peace. Just the kind of quiet that follows exposure. The kind that lingers. Maye stood alone on her walkway, one hand resting lightly on the antenna she had retrieved from the side yard. It was no longer blinking. But the silence around her was louder than ever. The next morning, the street was unusually quiet. No sprinklers hissed before dawn. No joggers passed. Curtains stayed drawn a little longer. The kind of stillness that wasn't peaceful, just unsure. Like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath, waiting to see what came next. Maye stood by her window, not watching, just letting the light settle over her tea. No antenna in hand. No laptop open. Just her and the morning sun. The cruiser had come and gone. The silence was different now. At around 9, there was a knock on her front door. 3 short taps. Hesitant. She opened it to find Teresa standing alone, her shoulders drawn in beneath a loose cardigan. No makeup. No polish. Just rawness in the eyes, and something deeper behind it. Shame, maybe, or something more fragile. Maye said nothing. Just stepped aside. Teresa didn't sit when offered a chair. She stood in the center of the room, looking at the dining table where the repeater had once rested. Her fingers twisted the edge of her sleeve as if trying to hold herself together. I wanted to say I'm sorry, she said finally. Her voice was thin, but deliberate. I really thought I was helping. Maye looked at her for a long moment. Then she walked to the cabinet beneath the stairs, opened a drawer, and retrieved a faded newspaper clipping, folded into thirds. She placed it gently on the table between them. Teresa frowned and unfolded it. It was an old story. Grainy print. A photo of May, years younger, stepping out of a courtroom. The headline read, "Lawsuit dropped against tabloid photographer after illegally following model across state lines." "I was 47, May said softly. "Divorced. Building my own life. A man thought it would be entertaining to follow me across 3 states for a gossip column. Called it curiosity journalism. But all it did was teach me that when someone watches you without asking, it's not interest. It's erasure." Teresa didn't speak. "You think what Eli did was new?" May continued. "It's old. As old as power itself. Some people hide behind technology to justify it. Others hide behind fences. But it's all the same. Watching without listening. Judging without knowing." Teresa's hands were trembling now. "I thought you were different," she whispered. "Too quiet. Too clever. Too distant." May gave a small nod. "I am quiet. I am clever. And I value my distance. That doesn't make me dangerous." Teresa swallowed. "I didn't want to believe it was him." "I know," May said. "But the worst part," Teresa added, her voice cracking, "is that you were the only one who noticed what was happening to all of us." May walked to the window. Her tone was soft, almost kind. "People don't always see the thing that watches them. Sometimes it's easier to look at the person who doesn't wave at block parties. Or the one with the antenna. It's neater that way." Teresa's eyes welled. She wiped them quickly, like emotion had no place in this room. "What happens now?" she asked. May turned back to her. "That depends on what you do with the silence." Teresa nodded once, not in understanding, but in the kind of agreement that comes from knowing you're still learning. She left a moment later. No embrace. No dramatic exit. Just a door closing softly behind her. May stood in the center of her home, surrounded by quiet. Not hollow. Not empty. Just honest. And for the first time in weeks, the silence didn't feel like something was missing. It felt like something was beginning. A week later, the neighborhood was different. Not on the surface. Lawns were still trimmed. Children still rode bikes down the sidewalk in the afternoons. But the air had shifted. Conversations carried a new edge, quieter, more deliberate. No one said Eli's name. No one mentioned the cruiser. But May noticed how people hesitated before waving now, how glances lingered a second longer, not out of suspicion, but recognition. They knew. On Friday evening, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops and left the sky streaked with lavender, May composed an email. Not long. Just a few lines. She sent it to the neighborhood listserv. "To whom it may concern, I don't need an apology. But I do suggest you check your router logs. And your assumptions." Below that, she attached a short document, steps to secure home networks, links to free firewall tools, a list of known vulnerabilities. Practical. Quietly defiant. The replies came in slowly. A few thank yous. One terse, duly noted. Someone asked if she'd consider giving a short workshop at the community center. She didn't respond. Not yet. Saturday morning, as she was trimming the rosemary bush by the front gate, she heard a small voice behind her. "Excuse me." May turned. A girl stood there. Maybe 9. Brown skin, braided pigtails, a t-shirt 2 sizes too big with a space shuttle on the front. She clutched a battered school-issued Chromebook to her chest. "Are you the lady who caught the spy?" the girl asked. May blinked. "I suppose that depends on your definition of spy. My mom said you saw what no one else did." The girl paused. "I think that's cool." May knelt down a little. "What's your name?" "Layla," the girl said. "Layla," May repeated, smiling gently. "What can I help you with?" Layla looked down at her feet. "I was wondering if you could show me how to make sure my camera's not watching me when I don't want it to." May didn't answer right away. She just looked at her. Really looked. Then nodded once. "Come by tomorrow afternoon. Bring your laptop." I'll show you how to make it yours again. Layla's face lit up like sunrise. She gave a quick nod and ran back down the sidewalk, hair bouncing behind her. Maye stood slowly, dusted off her gloves, and watched her disappear into the light. Across the street, a man watering his lawn looked over and gave a small, unsure wave. Maye nodded back. Nothing more. There was no parade. No press. No apology baked into a pie. Just a child with a question, and a woman with an answer. It wasn't justice. But it was a beginning. And sometimes, that was enough.